Good morning, I'm Gretchen Ho. We're coming to you this Monday on the 11th day of August, bringing you Morning Matters because your mornings matter. Let's get to the stories that matter today. The Department of Health has established a fast lane in almost 20 hospitals across Metro Manila. This initiative aims to solve the rising number of leptospirosis cases during the monsoon season. House Prosecution Spokesperson Attorney Antonio Bucoy said that the fight is not over yet regarding the impeachment case against Vice President Sara Duterte. However, he added that the House will comply with the Supreme Court's final ruling on the pending motions for consideration to avoid a constitutional crisis. And 3 Chinese Coast Guard vessels were spotted near the Batanes Islands last week, and they're now being monitored by the Philippine Coast Guard. Later, maritime security expert Ray Powell will join us to discuss the implications of this situation. Welcome to our program, Morning Matters, where we talk about issues you need to know for the rest of your day. Now, first on the agenda. Despite the Senate shelving the impeachment complaint against Vice President Sara Duterte, the House prosecution panel is still pushing to revive it, challenging the Supreme Court's ruling that struck it down as unconstitutional. Here is a report.
The fight isn't over yet. That's a statement of House Prosecution Panel spokesperson Attorney Antonio Bucoy after the Senate archived the impeachment case against Vice President Sara Duterte. This is because there are still motions for consideration filed to overturn the Supreme Court's decision declaring the case unconstitutional. Bucoy insists that the Supreme Court's ruling was completely wrong.
Mali mula letrang A hanggang letrang Z. Mali. Hindi batay sa katotohanan, kontra sa ebidensya, kontra sa batas. Hindi kami susuko na porke in-archive na tapos na ang boxing. Umaasa pa kami na pakikinggan kami ng kataas-taasang hukuman. May pagkakataon pa, meron pang chance na dinggin kami.
But if the Supreme Court stands by its ruling, the House will likely comply. Bucoy said they do not want to trigger a constitutional crisis.
Sasabihin ng Supreme Court, hindi, tama kami. Hindi ko namin susuwayin yan. Susundin namin yan. The House will not cause the constitutional crisis. The catalyst for the constitutional crisis will never be caused by the House.
If that happens, House Deputy Speaker and Iloilo Representative Janet Garin said it's still unclear what the chamber's next move will be.
I leave it to the members, all the members of the 20th Congress, no? Kasi sa ngayon lahat nag-uusap-usap, no? And syempre iba ang stand ng minority, iba naman ang stand ng majority. So these are things that we need to discuss, we need to balance and come up with concrete statements.
But if the court reverses its ruling and grants the House's appeal, Bucoy said the Senate should revive the impeachment case against the Vice President. He also rejected claims that the impeachment issue is anti-Duterte.
Ang motivation ng impeachment eh hindi naman para kontra Sara kontra katiwalian. Ito po ay sinusulong dahil sa pananagutan. Ang usapin ay ang kanyang krimen laban sa bayan. Panagutan niya. Hindi pa pinag-uusapan dito yung 2028. Walang katuturan dito yung politics.
Meanwhile, Davao City Vice Mayor Baste Duterte said he respects his sister's critics.
It's okay. It's a democracy. So yeah, they can say whatever they want. If you don't have the numbers, you can't have the cake. You can have the prize. Okay? So that's it. So you can say whatever you want.
But he insists that the impeachment bid is rooted in politics.
I'm going to say what I said before, and from the beginning, it's a political scheme. It's a smear campaign against the Vice President.
2 House lawmakers vowed to hold Vice President Sara Duterte accountable for the alleged misuse of confidential funds. Representatives Paulo Ortega and Jay Kong-hoon said the Supreme Court's ruling that declared her impeachment case unconstitutional did not clear her of the allegations. They stressed that the decision focused only on procedure and that any ruling on the charges would require a new impeachment process. The lawmakers also warned against misinformation, claiming Duterte was absolved. They said they will continue to pursue accountability, whatever it takes them. President Bongbong Marcos will sign a bill to postpone the December barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections. He has also ordered a 60-day halt to rice imports to shield farmers during the harvest season. Here is a report.
President Bongbong Marcos said he would sign a law postponing the December 2025 barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections. Speaking to reporters on the sidelines of his state visit to India, Marcos stressed the government must focus on the first-ever parliamentary elections in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao.
No, I'll sign it. I'll sign it. Because we are facing the one of the biggest elements here, kakatapos lang natin ng malaking eleksyon, midterm election. Susunod na rito yung BARM. Isasabay pa natin ngayon yung barangay. Masyado nang, ang OMELEC actually nagsasabi, hindi namin kaya.
Once signed, the measure will move to BSKE from December 1, 2025 to November 2026. It will also extend the terms of barangay officials from 3 years to 4.
You have to remember, the BARM election that is upcoming in October is the first time we have ever had this kind of election at all. At all. Sa buong kasaysayan ng Pilipinas, hindi pa nagkaroon ng BARM parliament na hinalal ng tao. So, that is why it is so important. And if that election fails, malaking bagay, malaking failure yan dun sa peace process.
According to COMELEC Chairman George Garcia, more than 2 million voters registered from August 1 to 9 for the BSKE. In other policy updates, the President has ordered a 60-day suspension of rice imports starting September 1. The goal? To protect local farmers and stabilize palay prices during harvest season. The Agriculture Department said the ban applied only to well-milled and regular milled rice, excluding fragrant and basmati varieties. No order has been issued yet to raise rice tariffs. The DA recommended increasing them from 15 to 25%. The Samahang Industriya ng Agrikultura welcomed the suspension but urged the government to restore tariffs to the original 35%.
Welcome development ito, pero siyempre mas gusto natin yung tariff, no? From 15 ibalik sa 35. Yun ang original tariff eh. Yun ang allowable binigay ng WTO sa atin, yung 35% tariff. Kasi yung nag-harvest ng January to June or July, almost 9 million metric tons na yun. Ang lugi na magsasaka is almost 54 billion pesos. Dahil dun sa 10 pesos na palay na price.
The DA does not expect major changes in supply or prices since the import ban will coincide with the harvest season.
The Department of Education has ordered schools nationwide to tighten security measures following the shooting incident at Santa Rosa Integrated School in Nueva Ecija. Education Secretary Sani Angara issued a directive on August 8 urging stricter enforcement of long-standing safety policies. Under DepEd Order Number 40, Series of 2012, all acts of violence, abuse, and possession of weapons or other harmful items are strictly prohibited on campus. Angara also emphasized DepEd Order Number 007, Series of 2024, which requires every school to maintain a safe, secure, and supportive learning environment. He called on educators, parents, and communities to work together to ensure that schools remain safe, peaceful, and nurturing spaces for all learners. Let's move on over to weather. Tropical cyclone Podul has entered the Philippine area of responsibility. It was given the local name Goryo. Its center was last spotted some 1,305 kilometers east of extreme northern Luzon. Goryo has no direct impact yet on any part of the country, though it may make landfall over the northeastern coast of Taiwan on Wednesday and exit the Philippine area of responsibility by Wednesday evening or Thursday morning. For now, the habagat continues to trigger rains over some parts of the country, including Metro Manila, Ilocos, Zambales, Bataan, Cavite, Batangas, Occidental Mindoro, Palawan, Batanes, and the Babuyan Islands. When we return, let's get expert insight from maritime security expert Ray Powell regarding the implications of Chinese ships being spotted near Batanes. Don't go away. Morning Matters will return after a quick break. Good morning, I'm Gretchen Ho, and here in Morning Matters, we talk about the most pressing issues and give you the context behind the headlines. The Philippine Coast Guard is monitoring 3 Chinese Coast Guard vessels spotted near the Batanes Islands close to Taiwan. The ships were first seen Thursday, a day after President Marcos said Manila could not stay out of a China-Taiwan conflict because of its location. One vessel was tracked about 140 kilometers west of Sabtang Town, while bad weather hindered closer checks on the others. China has protested Marcos's remarks, urging the Philippines to uphold the One China policy and avoid playing with fire over Taiwan. To help us understand the implications of this latest development, joining us now is maritime security expert Ray Powell, director of Sea Light. Welcome back to Morning Matters, to our show.
Thanks, Gretchen. It's good to see you.
Good to see you. You've been sounding the alarm over heightened activity in different areas of the West Philippine Sea. I do know that I saw you post first before the PCG announced anything on what's happening over in Batanes.
Yeah.
You described the movement as bracketing.
Yeah.
Is that unusual?
Yeah, so yes. This is actually the first time I've ever seen the China Coast Guard operate east of the archipelago, of course, the northern part of the archipelago with Batanes. So I think it was very clearly tied to China's concerns over what it believes is too much talk about Taiwan coming from the Philippines because of where it happened and the unprecedented nature of this particular deployment.
So it happened after the remarks of the president?
It did, yeah. Now, there have been sort of, undercurrents of discussions between the Philippines and Taiwan over the recent months, and I think that probably Beijing has been nervous about that. And so now, what the president said in New Delhi was actually pretty measured and reasonable. If there is a Taiwan contingency, the Philippines is looking at a major humanitarian problem. There are a couple of 100,000 Philippine workers in Taiwan.
Correct.
There will be refugee flows coming across the Baste Channel. So it's not exactly I don't think that he crossed any lines, but Beijing is on such a hair trigger when it comes to Taiwan.
Well, let me quote the president, what he said. If there is a confrontation over Taiwan between China and the United States, there's no way that the Philippines can stay out of it simply because of our physical geographic location. If there's an all-out war across the Taiwan Strait, or no, that's not included. If there's an all-out war, then the Philippines will be joined into it. We will have to defend our territory and sovereignty. In addition, there are a large volume of Filipinos in Taiwan.
He might as well have said the sky is blue. I mean, honestly, that's just the fact. But with Beijing, in many cases, you're not allowed to state facts when it comes to Taiwan. They just right now they've become so ultra sensitive about Taiwan, and this is not a change in anything except for Beijing's own attitude.
Well, Beijing has been conducting exercises over near the Taiwan Strait, right? Why is it unusual this time?
So what's made this different is their deployment around Batanes. So not just to the west, which is actually fairly unusual already, but to the east is completely unprecedented for the China Coast Guard.
It's going near.
Right. Yeah, I call it bracketing.
It was more of the defense against anything that could happen with Batanes.
I think it's very much messaging, right? So. A total of 3 China Coast Guard ships is what we tracked. And by the way, they have redeployed. So since yesterday, they're all sort of on their way back to China. But I think it was a very specific message. You saw the Global Times, China's state-run newspaper, put out a complaint about Marcos mentioning Taiwan in New Delhi. So I think it's a very specific message about that. But they are on their way back to China.
Now, what patterns have you been seeing around Taiwan? I mean, is an invasion imminent?
So I continue to believe that China does not want to have to invade Taiwan. what they want, and it's similar to what they want out of the Philippines. They want capitulation. They want to communicate the message that resistance is futile. You might as well make it easy on yourselves and just give up quietly, so that we don't have to have this cross-strait invasion. So I think that they are showing a lot of muscle to try to influence Taiwan's politics so that eventually they capitulate peacefully.
Hence the exercises around Taiwan.
Right.
Okay. How about you mentioned that today there's an activity going on in Scarborough Shoal.
Yes. So this is what the Philippines is called Kadiwa, which is their effort to support their fishermen at sea. So
Refuel to give food supplies.
Yeah, and actually to buy their catch while they're at sea, so they don't have to come all the way back to Zambales in order to resupply and offload their catch. So these don't happen terribly often. It's a pretty new program, and so I have seen there's at least one Philippine Coast Guard, at least one fisheries ship, and the and one support ship that they send out to do these missions. So I've seen they actually have been out this morning, and they are experiencing quite a lot of Chinese activity at Scarborough Shoal.
How many ships are you monitoring around that area?
So right now that I can see, there are at least 7 China Coast Guard and 14 maritime militia ships surrounding Scarborough Shoal, up to a radius of about 25 to 30 nautical miles.
Okay, they've kind of heightened or tightened security around that area.
Yeah.
I mean, ever since they were able to, shut out the Philippine vessels, right? I mean,
Right.
Ever since last year, I believe.
Really, yeah. So about say April or so of last year into about April of this year, we tracked a spike in Chinese activity around the shoal, and we're calling it an exclusion zone. They're basically screening out any Philippine vessels that try to come in, perhaps, especially any large Philippine vessels, any Philippine government vessels. They basically are trying to
But
keep
have the fishermen still been able to go inside?
From
or
what I
near
have
the
heard,
shore?
it has become very inaccessible to the fishermen, and if they are able to get in, it's going to be just the smallest of boats.
Is your tracker able to detect the fishing boats? Or
Not really, no.
Not really.
So they have 2 different kinds of what we call the automatic information system. There's the Class A AIS, which broadcasts at a strength where it can be picked up by satellite, and those are the ones that I can track. Any Philippine fishermen that have AIS usually have the Class B, which is much weaker, and so
Okay.
it's hard to see that far out from shore.
But these Kadiwa runs, how often do you see this?
This is, as I'm remembering, we had one a couple of months ago at Sabina Shoal. So this is only really the second one that I recall.
Okay. How about over in Pag-asa Island? I mean, I think you posted something also about an activity there, harassing a fisheries vessel, BRP Roma Penet.
Yes. So that was, so it went out to Pag-asa. So again, I don't know, there haven't been any announcements from the government what happened. All I could see is that the BRP Roma Penet left Pag-asa going toward the
Sandy
west
Cay.
in the direction of Sandy Cay, met a number of militia and Coast Guard vessels, turned around and went back. Now, I don't know what its intentions were. Maybe it only wanted to go out that far, but it looked like it was being impeded by the militia and the Coast Guard.
We also know that the situation over in Sandy Cay is same as what's happening in Bajo de Masinloc. Very, very sensitive.
Yes.
And China trying to
I think that
really
China
put a blockade over those areas.
Yes, essentially. Yeah, I think that's a fair description of what's going on.
So
Sandy
it
Cay.
accompanied BRP Roma Penet all the way back to Palawan.
Almost to Palawan. So what is, I think, again, it was a message. It's like, we didn't like what you did, so we are going to escort you almost all the way back to Palawan. So, they usually will turn off, before they get to what we call the contiguous zone, which is 24 nautical miles out from shore. And that's what they did. They turned off, but they went almost all the way back to Palawan with Roma Penet.
It kind of reminds me of what happened during the civilian convoy Mission 1, where they accompanied us for far distance, not just asking us to turn back, but they were
Made
it was
sure
like
you
they
went
were
home.
escorting us out.
Yeah, yeah, I remember that very well. So you were on the ship then? Yeah.
Okay, so describe to us. Do you think there's an escalation overall from China in the recent month? How long has
yeah.
this been going on?
Certainly, I think, particularly around Bajo de Masinloc, I think that there has been a significant escalation just in the sheer number of vessels they've got. It really does look like a big ring around the shoal now. Now, I don't know if this is going to be a permanent state of affairs. This is an awful lot of ships to have, out there at any given time. But, if I went back a year and a half, I mean, especially a year and a half, 2 years, you might see 1 China Coast Guard, 2 maritime militia. Right now we're looking at 21 ships, and those are just the ones I can see on AIS. There may be additional ones that are dark. So it is a big statement that China is making, and certainly I think they are letting the Philippines know that if we want to control Scarborough Shoal, we can.
Well, of course, this is happening in the greater context of, the timing of what happened up at Batanes, coinciding with the president's visit to India,
Right.
where they announced a strategic defense cooperation with India.
Yeah, strategic partnership, yeah.
What does that bring to the table of the Philippines, you think?
So when they announce these diplomatic upgrades, a lot of that is very symbolic, right? So it does bring into play other diplomatic forums that they will initiate. But it is a very symbolic step to say that we are, they have sort of levels of where these partnerships can go, and they'll get more,
What does strategic partnership mean, to be exact? We have one also with Vietnam.
Yeah.
We have one with Japan, Australia, and South Korea.
So each level that they sort of upgrade to introduces additional structural changes to the diplomatic forums that they will have. So they'll have more forums with more people. And so, I mean, again, there's this, just to give you an idea, Vietnam has China as its highest level of partnership. I believe it's something even higher than comprehensive strategic partnership. I can't remember exactly what the term is.
Higher than mutual defense?
No. No, but within Vietnam's terms, because Vietnam has no allies. But Vietnam also believes China is its greatest threat. So there's a certain amount to which these things can be a little bit of theater, right? But I think with respect to the Philippines and India, it's actually a pretty important step for the Philippines, which is trying very hard to internationalize its security issues and its relations because it's under such threat. And India can't be accused of being just one more U.S. ally, right? Because India is very much non-aligned, and so it has very close relations to the U.S. It also has very close relations to Russia, which is making the U.S. very unhappy right now. It tries to be multi-aligned, is what it says. So I think for the Philippines, as it tries to internationalize this issue, it's an important step to bring in, the world's largest democracy, and yet one that's not directly aligned to the U.S.
Well, I know India has its own border disputes with China, but what could be the interests of India in this region?
Yeah. So India has actually expressed interest for many, many years. They call it the Act East, they call it. They're very interested in the South China Sea, the fact that there are vessel flows. In fact, a couple of years ago, it had a major exercise, a big exercise with ASEAN, which is the only time I've ever seen ASEAN have a naval exercise within the 9-dash line, and it only did it with India. So bringing in India actually, I think, helps to remind China that there are more countries out there that are interested in their excessive 9-dash line claim.
Just the United States.
It's not just great power competition with the U.S., right?
But it still, makes one ask, why would India want to get involved in all the, heat here in this region, right?
Well, to some degree, India, so as you mentioned, it has a border dispute with China. So, and it also, like other countries like the U.S., wants to complicate China's strategic problem. It doesn't want to make it too easy on China to be able to focus in on the border. It wants to say, look, India is willing to be over here, working with partners over here and over there, that kind of thing. So, it wants to make sure that it keeps China on its toes.
And how could the Philippines maximize this partnership?
Well, I think you're already seeing some of that with, for example,
missiles.
The BrahMos missiles, of course. You're also seeing it with the joint patrols of the maritime cooperative activity that it did with India. Again, moving outside of that U.S. alliance structure and bringing in India changes the dynamic a little bit and says this is an international issue. It's not just an alliance thing.
But at what point can these international powers really do something more than just have the exercises? Because we've seen that a lot, even with the French Navy.
Sure. I think what the Philippines is doing is taking the long view, and that's wise because this is not a problem that's going to be solved by a joint patrol. This is not a problem that's going to be solved by...
It's mostly political statements.
Yeah,
right?
and I have described what China is doing in the West Philippine Sea as a maritime occupation. And how do you, if you're the resistance, how do you combat an occupation? You do it over a long period of time and you wear the occupier out. And so what you're trying to do is you're trying to convince the occupation force, in this case a maritime occupation force, over the long term that what it's paying to conduct this occupation is not worth the cost. In other words, at some point they sort of wake up and say, why am I doing this? Why am I uniting all of my adversaries against me? Why am I causing myself all this problem? Why am I spending so many resources, defending water against, when I could just sort of back off and not do all of these things. And that's how occupations end in the end, is the occupation force just gets tired and says, why are we doing this?
But as you mentioned, taking a look at the activity of China in the past year, they've sent more maritime militia ships, they've sent more CCGs.
Yeah.
Isn't that just eliciting that kind of response from China, putting out more ships out at sea, making the situation more difficult, allowing them to encroach on more space?
We often refer to this as escalation dominance, right? Basically, I can escalate more than you can. And that's true, right, when it comes to the Philippines. China just has more stuff. It has more ships. It has 1.4 billion people. It has a much larger economy. And so I think the answer is, from the Philippines, is, okay, yes, that's true, but how long are you willing to keep this up? How many problems are you willing to cause yourself? Because China has been causing itself a lot of problems by its aggression. And in some ways it does it because it's very, very self-confident right now, and it believes it can get everything it wants just by pushing really, really hard. But will it still believe that in 2, 3, 5, or 10 years?
Well, China, after all, was very sensitive to perception and optics, right?
Right.
As we've seen with the Taiwan equation.
Well, and what China has been trying to do with the Taiwan equation is basically convince everybody that it's not worth their problems to mess around in Taiwan, China's internal affair, right? And so, and some countries listen to that, and they, so recently we've had several Pacific Island countries that used to recognize Taiwan stop. But I mean, last week on our podcast, I interviewed the president of Palau, and he's one who has stood up and said, no, we're not going to do that, even though in 2016 we had 100,000 Chinese tourists, and right after that, when we refused to stop recognizing Taiwan, they basically cut them all off, and we had that economic contraction. But you know what? Our principles mean something to us.
Before we let you go, I just want to pull up the photo that you tweeted early this morning, about 30 minutes ago.
Sorry, this is a different one. This
The
is
other
one that I did a couple of days
yung
ago.
kanina na photo nakita natin. Ito.
Yes.
What are we seeing here?
All right, so there you see right in the middle, you see the Kadiwa support ship right in the middle, moving out from Manila Bay. You see actually the VRP Roma Panet is up there to the north. that came out also to support from Palawan. And down in the south, you can see the Teresa Magbanwa, the Philippine Coast Guard. And then you can see all of these Chinese ships. You see the Maritime Militia, you see the China Coast Guard, as I said.
What's the distance from Scarborough Shoal of
It's
those
about
Chinese ships?
25 to 30 nautical
Wow,
miles.
very far from the 12 nautical
Yeah, they're not able to.
territorial sea.
Yeah.
Okay. One last question. The PCG has expressed concern over the heightened presence of research vessels. Are you able to detect the research vessels, and what could they be looking at?
They do a number of things. One is they do legitimate scientific research. They also map the seafloor for, support their submarines, and they want to kind of keep track of what other people's submarines are doing. They also make sort of maritime assertions of their jurisdiction. And they say, so they'll go into another country's exclusive economic zone and say, we're going to research right here because we can and we claim this. So they will often do that as well.
So it's not just in our EEZ. They do this in other
We've seen it in Malaysia's EEZ.
Okay.
We've seen it in... Actually, well, the craziest example I saw was 2 years ago. They went into to Vietnam's EEZ and actually did a survey for a month drawing the Chinese character for China. They actually drew a character. Chong. Yeah, they actually drew Chong. They actually drew Chong in Vietnam.
They were making those movements.
Yeah, it clearly served no scientific purpose whatsoever. All it was a month, and the research ship was surrounded by militia and Coast Guard vessels. So it was basically a survey in force to draw the character for China in Vietnam's EEZ.
And to send a message again.
That was the only purpose of it. It served no scientific purpose whatsoever.
Well, thank you so much for, keeping us alert of all these developments out at sea. We do need an extra pair of eyes to tell us what's happening out there when we don't get the updates real time, right? Thank you so much again for your insight and for being with us here in the studio, joining us, flying all the way from Davao.
I was in Davao yesterday, yep.
Thank you so much. We have maritime security expert Ray Powell. He is, of course, the director of Sea Light. And coming right up, the Health Department is intensifying efforts to control the surge in leptospirosis cases. However, it begs the question, is the fast lane strategy in DOH hospitals sufficient? Let's discuss that with former Health Secretary Representative Janet Garin when Morning Matters returns. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. The Department of Health warned that leptospirosis cases may still rise in the coming days due to recent flooding. From June 8 to August 7, the DOH recorded 2,396 cases nationwide. Now, to address the surge, the agency has set up fast lanes in 19 hospitals to provide consultations, risk assessments, and doxycycline prescriptions for patients exposed to contaminated floodwaters. East Avenue Medical Center, San Lazaro Hospital, and the National Kidney and Transplant Institute currently have the highest number of admissions. Now, to share her insights on the government's response to the ongoing challenges and what needs to be done to protect Filipino communities from leptospirosis, we are joined by House Deputy Speaker and former Health Secretary Representative Janet Garin. Magandang umaga po sa inyo.
Magandang umaga, Gretchen, and thank you for inviting me.
Congresswoman, you've raised your concern over the rising number of leptospirosis cases in the country. To your view, what could be the main factors contributing to the rise?
Kinulang, no? Kinulang tayo ng communication and real action on the grounds. Because marami ang, we should not divert the issue of high cases, increasing cases of leptospirosis to the investigation on flood control projects. Dapat ipagpatuloy yung investigasyon na yan, but that cannot be pinpointed as to the cause. Because these projects that are being investigated are recent na pinahinto yung pondo. We are talking about possibly failed project is in the past. But on leptospirosis, maski ulan pa lang, maski walang bagyo, marami talaga ang kaso. Kasi the rats are endemic in the country. So what do? It's a preventable illness. The spirochete can actually be, even if it enters the body of a patient, prophylaxis or prevention is better than cure. So, yung doxycycline, 2 tabletas, may sugat ka man or wala, nakainom ka man ng baha or wala, lumangoy ka man sa baha o hindi. As long as you were exposed, aggressive dapat ang Department of Health dito. We have 3 things: prepositioning of drugs at the lower level, even in the schools where evacuation centers are being conducted. Aggressive reminder during and after the typhoon. Ang dami kasi nating kasamahan sa barangay and sa LGUs. We just need to keep on prodding them. Sa mga evacuation centers, okay, nga, bigay ang gamot. Nga, bigay ang gamot. You cannot just leave it and presume that people would know and people would recall. Yung bahay-bahay na ginagawa ng ating barangay health workers dun sa mga flooded areas, nandiyan yan dati. Medyo kinulang at nawala yung karamihan ng ating response ngayon. So, we need the DOH to be more responsive on the ground, strong partnership with the LGUs.
Okay, hindi po ba parang ito pong rise in cases ay normal naman ho pagdating sa rainy season? Talagang, syempre po, tag-ulan po talaga. Isn't this a normal pattern, a normal trend that we see also an increase in the number of getting leptospirosis? Or is this
It is
unusual?
expected. In fact, if we compare the number of cases last year as compared to this year with the same duration, with the same time, with the same month and the same day, mas mataas pa yung last year kesa ngayon. Kaya nga ando dun, we need to go back and say, we need to be more aggressive. Hindi pwede magbibigay ng isang advisory ang Department of Health tapos wala na. Dapat that advisory should transcend to every Filipino family that is affected by the rainy season and the flooding. Kasi minsan maski walang baha, tubig lang na sumasakay ka ng motor, tumalsik yung tubig sa mata or sa mouth mo, any opening in the body, that can still cause leptospirosis. Kaya nga, kapag hindi sigurado, better be on the safe side, take doxycycline, 2 kapsula or 2 tableta within 72 hours after exposure. Ang mahirap kasi, the preposition drugs are either in the central office or in the regional office. And during the typhoon and after the typhoon, everybody is busy cleaning, handling the feeding programs, and facilitating the people in the evacuation centers. This should be prepositioned at the level of the barangays.
Okay, so sa ngayon hindi po na nagkaroon ng maayos na sistema sa pagpapadala nito mga doxycycline papunta sa mga schools and LGUs. Yun po ba yung problema dito?
Ang nangyayari kasi, like our experience when we call people, it's prepositioned in the regional offices. Kunyari sa probinsya, malayo ang regional office, naputol ang daan. And this has been an issue for the past 2 or 3 budget hearings na paulit-ulit na sinasabi, and the DOH naman, in fairness to them, will accept it. Kaya lang, they have to walk the talk. In saying that yes, it is needed, it should be converted into actions on the ground. Tapos kunyari nga, natapos na yung baha, meron pang mga konting baha dyan, nagbabahay-bahay ang ating barangay health workers. Of course, they're under the LGUs, but the DOH can always collaborate with them. So we need a more proactive health workforce or health direction. Kasi kung binahay-bahay mo yan, o sino dito yung nabasa ng tubig ulan or tubig baha?
Yes.
Sino dito yung naglakad habang binabaha? Nga, okay, bigay ng gamot. Nga, bigay ng gamot. Kasi if you tell them, ando dun yun sa central office, andun sa regional office, kuha lang kayo. Hindi na nga sila makagalaw dahil sinasalba o nililinis yung kanilang bahay or naghahanap ng pagkain or nagtatrabaho. So, these are simple solutions to a major problem.
Ibig sabihin po, there should be a higher sense of urgency from the Department of Health to institutionalize the way that this is given in a preventive way rather than in just have it as a cure after.
Definitely, because when the 24 to 72 hours, pag malagpasan mo yan, wala nang epekto ang doxycycline. In this case, it's prevention. That's why our hospitals are flooded.
Correct.
Ang daming pasyente. Ngayon, doon na tayo gagalaw. O sige, lagyan ito ng green lane, mabilis sila, i-prioritize ito. But the real essence of healthcare there is, kung lahat yan, or sabihin natin hindi mo naabutan lahat, pero karamihan dyan ay napanganga mo, nalagyan mo ng 2 gamot at pinainom, sana hindi magiging ganito. Kasi paulit-ulit na to, Gretchen eh. And
Correct.
there's a manner of preventing it. Alam na ng buong matagal na, and there's a budget in the Department of Health that can be used and that should be used.
Pero ang doxycycline po, kailangan po ng prescription, no? Bago ka makakuha nito.
No, maraming binibili na doxycycline ang Department of Health. It is prepositioned supposedly in the regional offices. For the past 2 budget hearings, I've been communicating with the leadership of DOH openly during budget deliberations. Bakit hindi nyo ilagay dun sa mga bayan? Or, mas maganda pa nga, like kami sa mga probinsya, bakit hindi natin ilagay doon sa mga principal's office? Kasi doon tumatakbo yung mga gym na sa school, doon nag-evacuate. At least doon, yung ating mga principal, matuturuan naman yung ating mga teachers and the admin officers there, or yung BHW pupunta doon. So lahat ng ando doon na willing uminom, ay bibigyan mo ng gamot. It's free eh. And kung kinukulang man, may quick response fund ang DOH na agad-agad binibili nila ito in terms of emergency. Pero ang nangyayari, the medicines are there, it's left in the storage rooms. Kung hindi pa kailangan, dun pa kukuha, magre-requisition pa. Parang napakatagal ng proseso. By the time it reaches the victims or those exposed to the waters during the rainy season and the typhoon, wala na. Nag-lapse ng 72 hours. Ngayon, doon na tayo nagiging aggressive. O magbantay kayo ng sintomas. Kapag nilalagdat kayo, kapag nagiging dark color yung ihi nyo, punta ka agad sa hospital. But the point here is, leptospirosis is a traitor illness. The spirokit is there in your body. You don't feel anything, but once symptoms are there, there's a point of irreversibility. Kasi hindi mo matansya yung degree of attack niya. So, why do we have to wait for that? Ito, napakamura ng doxycycline. May pondo ang gobyerno, pinamimili yan, madaling ipamigay yan. Bakit kailangan hintayin mong sino ang hihingi or kukuha pa dun sa inyong warehouse or dun sa regional office or dun sa central office?
Okay, so yung nabanggit niyo pong sintomas, yung lagnat at yung pangingitim ng ihi, yun lang po ba yung pinaka-telling?
Hindi siya pangingitim. It's dark-colored. It can be dark yellow. Well, if it's orange already, ibig sabihin yan, meron ng bleeding sa loob. So, medyo hindi na maganda kasi sa loob yan, matindi na yung epekto ng spirokit dun sa katawan mo. Panghihina ng katawan. Others would have yellowish, slightly yellowish eyes. Kasi the spirokit that causes leptospirosis, the leptospira, it attacks your blood vessels. And ultimately, paborito niyang atakihin yung kidneys ng pasyente. So, you see, that's why the dialysis center becomes overloaded. So, ito yung mga hinihintay na sintomas. Yung iba naman, pwedeng nilagnat lang or whatever. And that will again congest the hospitals. But, if we have repeated information up to the grounds where all the health workforce with the LGUs are mobilized together with the directions being set by the Department of Health, kukonti ang magiging ganyan.
Okay. Ito po ay pwedeng i-take bago lumusong sa kahit anong baha. Pwede po bang ganon? Na kung wari sa mga responder po natin or
it's best,
kung naasahan niyo na po na binabaha kayo. Oo. What do you mean by that?
A prevention. Kung na-expose ka, let's say example, umulan, tapos dumaan ka sa kalye na sa pananaw mo may daga dun sa area, you can take it. Kasi usually, dati, ina-advise siya pag meron kang mga sugat, no, in between your toes or may sugat ka sa paa. Kasi malambot yung balat in between the toes. So, maski walang sugat, pwede yang mapasok ng leptospira. Minsan naman yung iba nasa motor, tapos minsan tumatawa or naglalakad tumatawa, may tumalsik na tubig sa mouth or sa eyes. Those can be point of entries, no, of the spirokit. So, any area na may tubig na posible yung ihi ng daga ay dinala niya at napalangoy yung spirokit, those are red flags. Kaya kailangan uminom ka agad ng doxycycline, 2 tabletas. There's actually kung may sugat ka, iba yung pag-inom mo, no? Pero pag the usual is actually 2 tablets within 24 to 72 hours. Kaya dati, ang experience kasi ng DOH, andun yung gamot, hindi nagagamit. So, we innovated na lahat ng evacuation centers yan, pinupuntahan nga, sumasabay pa nga ang DOH dati sa DSWD, pamigay ng pagkain, pamigay ng food pack, o bigay, nakapila yan sa evacuation centers. Then sa mga barangay naman, andun yung ating mga BHW, nagbabahay-bahay. O sino po dito ang nabasa ng tubig, baha? O sino dito yung naglakad? Yon. Eto naman. So, nagiging naaalala ng tao because the typhoon victims are preoccupied with a lot of things. Minsan, pag meron isang advisory ang DOH tapos wala na, nakakalimutan nila yon.
Yun nga po actually hindi nga lang din po yung mga nasa evacuation center, pati yung mga nagtatrabaho sa gitna ng matinding ulan. Katulad na lamang po ng mga riders natin, sino pa ba yung mga vendors natin, they should be able to access these. If for those listening who are always exposed, saan po ba minsan ngayon kasi kayo po ay nagko-call out na dapat ito po ay nasa mga eskwelahan, nasa mga LGU, pero usually nasa central or regional office lamang. I mean, where could we get a hold of doxycycline?
This is regularly procured by the Department of Health. Dina-download yan, binababa yan, dapat sa regional offices. Ang nangyayari kasi, kung hindi pa magbagyo, doon lang naaalala na magpaba. Tapos pag binaba mo sa regional office, ang sasabihin pa, kung kailangan ng mga bayan, sige, kung may sasakyan kayo, kunin nyo dito. So sa dami ng trabaho ng LGUs, nakakaligtaan na yon, especially in the rural areas, no? But then, doon naman sa mga Mekaya, some LGUs, they actually buy that. Pero yung iba naman, they depend on the supply of the DOH. Now, pwede rin siyang bilhin. Kaya nga, nagbabantay din ang DTI niya na hindi tumaas ang presyo ng doxycycline tuwing tag-ulan. So, pwede siyang bilhin. Prescription is, pagkaintindi ko, hindi na hinahanapan ng prescription kapag gano'n na, mga tag-ulan at binabaha. And for those naman na talagang naghahanap ng prescription, they can, it's, marami ang mga doktor, even the government doctors who actually prescribe it electronic prescription na. So, hindi na kailangan lumabas.
Yun nga po yung tatanungin ko sana, kasi sabi ng DOH tungkol sa prescription, talagang kailangan ng doctor's prescription because for the wrong intake, the drug may become ineffective against bacteria and treating simple infections may become difficult. That this could lead to serious illnesses or complications if not taken the right way. What would you have to say about that?
Well, that is in relation to abuse of antibiotics, specifically those antibacterial medications being used for pneumonia, lung infections, and other infections. But in the case of doxycycline, this is targeted towards a spirochete, it's not an antibacterial. Hindi siya yung antibiotic na sinasabi ng DOH dun sa antimicrobial resistance. The statement that they're actually saying is related to abuse of medicines na kunyari, ako nagkasakit, binigyan ako ng antibiotic, dapat 7 days. Hindi ko inubos, Ang ano doon is dapat ubusin. Now, ininom ko lang ng 4 na araw kasi feeling ko gumaling na ako. Yung 3 araw, ibibigay ko sa kapitbahay. Yung bang nagpre-prescribe ang kapitbahay para doon sa sakit sa mga baga or whatever, pneumonia, flu, na yung flu dapat hindi naman yan binibigyan ng antibiotic. Yung konting kibot lang talagang antibiotic agad. Parang ginawa nilang gamot sa ubo at sipon yung antibiotic. Yun yung mali. Yun ang hindi dapat. But in this case, we're talking about doxycycline, which is a prophylactic drug against leptospirosis. Prophylaxis means baka nakapasok na sa katawan mo, yung incubation period na kung saan magiging aggressive ang spirochete, dun ka papasok. Parang you won't allow it to multiply, you won't allow it to act on your body. Kumbaga, kusa mo siyang mapapawala without acting on your body. So
meron pong dalawang klase.
Prevention.
May dalawang klase po ng doxycycline. Merong prophylactic and meron yung post-exposure. Chemoprophylactic, tama po ba yun? So yung prescription is required for the post-exposure? Kasi sabi po ng
Yes,
Philippine Institute of
it's-
Health that
it's-
doxycycline is an antibiotic. Oo.
Yes, it's ang doxycycline kasi na ginagamit natin for prophylactic. Yun ang pinamimigay natin. Now, the doxycycline that they are referring to na yung ginagamit na natin dun sa malala na mga chest and lung infections, in the current times, medyo konti na ang gumagamit nun. No? So, marami na kasi yung options. Marami na yung
okay.
tinatawag natin
That makes it
broad
clearer.
spectrum. No? Marami na yung alternative na tina-target na yung mas maraming organs, no, or mas maraming bakterya na pwedeng umatake sa isang tao. So, yun po yung difference. And that's why, andun kasi yung, if we are going to say, ay hindi, wag nating painumin kasi baka naman hindi siya napasok ng tubig baha. Over the years, per experience of the Department of Health, ang daming magugulat ka, ba't biglang nagyelo, ba't biglang dinala sa emergency room, tapos mag-emergency dialysis, hindi naman to lumusob sa tubig baha. And then we realize, maybe naglaro or natalsikan ng tubig, tapos natamaan. So you have to weigh the pros and cons. No, hindi naman araw-araw iinumin mo 'yon. Hindi naman araw-araw na umuulan ng todo at hindi naman araw-araw na bumabaha. But that protection window where you need to be protected, if you miss that, it will cost the life of a person. So sayang.
As we know, leptospirosis can be fatal if not treated. Bilang panghuli ho, no, kayo po ay isang former DOH secretary. Kayo po, nakausap niyo na po ba ang DOH tungkol dito sa mga recommendations na ito? What are you planning on your end as a legislator to be able to improve the situation?
Well, every budget hearing, we have been discussing it with them. The problem is they would make a lot of promises, but implementation on the grounds becomes different. And that's why when it was again twisted to point at the flood control projects that are being investigated, and when I was asked about it, I answered that, teka, wag nating ilihis. Kasi sa susunod na tag-ulan, mangyayari na naman ito. Let me just be clear. Okay, let us proceed with the investigation of this flood control projects na substandard. Ang unang tanong, nasaan ba ito? Because I don't think these are in the areas where there are a lot of leptospirosis. There are a lot of cases of leptospirosis. Magkaiba eh. So tuloy, mawawala ulit yung iisipin ng tao, ay hindi, kaya pala kami nagkasakit kasi yung flood control. Hindi eh. Part of that, if you have really good flood control projects and good garbage disposal, then we would have less flood, but then the rain will still be there, so people will still get exposed. There can still be cases of leptospirosis. So kaya doon tayo bumalik sa ano ba yung prevention, no? At the same time, itong mga area na marami tayong mga pasyente, hindi ito ang sinasabi ni Pangulong Bongbong Marcos na merong questionable flood control projects. So magkaiba yung lugar. That's why we have to go back. What really caused this surge? It's because people forget that there is a prevention if you get exposed. And people forget, nandiyan dyan lang yung gamot. And that is the job of the Department of Health, to really go down to the grounds. We cannot just do lip service. Kailangan natin bumaba kasi kailangan tayo ng taong bayan.
And the flood control projects audit will be the job of our lawmakers, and of course the commission audit to include that, no. Sana nga po magawa nito ng paraan at solusyon kasi meron po mga buong bayan din, no, nakalubog sa matinding baha, medyo matagal yung exposure. So as we know, we have been exposed to this kind of situation for a very long time, and we should get used to it by now. Maraming salamat po for shedding light on this situation, on the rising leptospirosis cases in the country. We have House Deputy Speaker Representative Janet Garin joining us today.
Thank you, Gretchen. God bless.
In sports, Kayla Napoles delivered the Philippines' first medal of the 2025 Chengdu World Games. This as Napoles took the silver in the women's jiu-jitsu and the Tianyang Cultural and Sports Center Gymnasium in China. She bowed to South Korea's representative, though, in the finals. Meanwhile, Las Pilipinas women clinched their 4th straight bronze medal in the Southeast Asia V-League, sweeping Indonesia in the second leg in Vietnam on Sunday, 25-17, 25-17, 28-26. In entertainment, Vibe launched its pilot episode this Sunday, introducing a fresh music countdown show to Philippine television. Featuring a talented lineup of Vibe jocks, the program highlights energetic performances centered on original Filipino music. The show garnered support from well-known personalities, fueling excitement around its debut. You'll catch that show, Vibe, daily on TV5 and through our digital platforms. And that wraps up today's episode of Morning Matters. We hope we've given you the right start to your week and your morning. Let's go ahead and make the day matter. My name is Gretchen Ho. We are One News, all sides, all the time.